Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, August 6th. This is the Board of Commissioners work session agenda, and we can skip the exec session we had this morning and go right to staff and community presentations. This afternoon, we've got an airport discussion with John Bennett and George Newman, former elected officials. And welcome, gentlemen. So glad you've come back for more.
Glutton for punishment.
Stay away.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
oh my God, is this in my future? No.
Well, thank you for inviting us today and letting us give you a short presentation about the airport. It's been 4 years, about 4 years now, since John and his team, the Vision Committee, and the Common Ground group of over 100 citizens came together with recommendations to the BoCC, and the BoCC unanimously accepted those recommendations and passed a resolution to that effect. And in addition, at that time, the BoCC also even tweaked some of the language that the Vision Committee presented, specifically to address the concerns that the BoCC had and the community regarding growth management. So we're here today to have John will give you a review of what those goals and recommendations were and still are to the BoCC and the community in regards to the airport, which seems to be sort of the hot topic these days. And I'm hoping that some of our illustrious editorial columnists will listen in, and they may learn something as well. And then I'll talk about some strategies in terms of how we think there's a path to achieve those goals.
Great, excellent, thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks for coming back and for help us reaffirm what we committed to a while back.
To remind us all. So I'll try to put our request that George is going to make later. Oh,
This one's just not working for some
okay.
reason.
Then let's
Talk to that
we'll
one.
talk into this one. All right. I'll try to put our request in context and offer a quick, I promise quick, sort of overview of the history. The five of you know this well, but there are others in the community who may not, so I think it's useful to sort of review some of that. George, you said 4 years ago, and I would have agreed, I do agree, it happens to have been August 6th, 2020, when I sat in this room, I think I sat right over there, and presented the recommendations of the Vision Committee. I discovered that today by accident, looking in my calendar.
It's Groundhog Day, John.
It is Groundhog Day. By whatever bizarre coincidence, what strange synchronicity in the universe led to that, who knows? So we had actually, the Vision Committee had come to its consensus back in March, but because of COVID, it was several months before we presented those formally to you guys. We call the Vision Committee's final report the Common Ground Recommendations. All of them were aimed at making our airport safer, cleaner, quieter, a better reflection of community values, and a more comfortable place for travelers. Before the long list of specific recommendations that we gave you, the Vision Committee set out 4 core community goals, as they call them, for the new airport. Those 4 goals were safety, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 30%, reducing noise by at least 30%, and managing airline enplanement growth to be consistent with community values. At that time, we suggested 0.8%. In our experience, those goals were and are overwhelmingly popular with the Valley community. There's zero doubt in my mind about that. In December 2020, a few months later, we were delighted when the 5 of you unanimously adopted the core community goals and all of the Common Ground recommendations. And we thank you for pursuing them over the last 4 years. While the 4 community goals are extraordinarily important, they are also challenging. 3 of them, lowering greenhouse gas emissions, reducing noise, and managing enplanement growth, require cooperation from the federal government and possibly the airlines serving Aspen. That means advocating for public policy changes at the federal level while also negotiating with the airlines. This will be a long-term effort, and I want to say I feel great that you guys are taking exactly the right kinds of steps to move in this direction. We thank you for sending Francie and Patty to D.C. earlier this year to urge Congress and agency officials to give local airports more flexibility and local control to achieve things like reducing aircraft carbon pollution. And Patty traveled to sunny Florida.
It's now getting blown away and flooding.
Exactly. Last month, I asked the National Association of Counties to help Pitkin County convince the federal government to collaborate with local airports in finding ways to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions and invest airport revenues in things like green energy production. These are wonderful efforts. Obviously, this will be a long road, and many more such efforts will be needed. But we can win this at the federal level. History is on our side. I'm utterly convinced of that. What week this summer have we not read of record-breaking hottest days on record? Wildfires, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, and other extreme weather events. Last night on CNN, speaking of Florida, I heard a Florida official call hurricane, now tropical storm Debbie's rainfall a 1,000-year event. Well, it might be until next year or the year after. Right. My point is simple. A federal policy change that might feel daunting today will not feel so daunting tomorrow. The climate emergency is not going away. In fact, it's becoming more obvious and more urgent year by year. The truth is, and then I'll wind up with this, our airport today is polluting and noisy. If we implement all the common ground recommendations, we could clean it up and create what would truly be the greenest airport in America. And that's a vision we think is really worth fighting for, and we know you guys do too. So thank you for everything you're doing. And with that, I will turn this back over to George for his thoughts about strategies.
Great, thanks, John. So earlier this summer, there was a celebration in Carbondale along with Senator Bennett and Secretary of Interior Deb Haaland. And we were celebrating the withdrawal of any future mining and mineral leasing in the Thompson Divide, encompassing over 220,000 acres for the next 20 years. It was a landmark decision that Secretary Haaland made. But it did not come easy. It required a tremendous amount of work, partnership, and cooperation. And it began with Pitkin County leading that charge. And I think if we look at Thompson Divide as a case study, we could utilize those same strategies for working on the goals that John has just expressed. The first thing the county did was dedicate a person, Chris Selden, full-time to carry that load from organizing, researching, writing, meetings. And that was critical to have Chris be the bird dog of this effort. The second thing that the county did was become part of a founding member of the Thompson Divide Coalition, which brought together a wide, diverse group of the community together to work in concert with the county. And that in itself, in terms of developing a coalition, as John just said, to have a coalition, not just locally in this case, because we're looking at a much larger issue in terms of climate change, but look to find regional and national partners, such as NACO, National Association of Counties. I mean, that's how we would gain some leverage to be able to move some of these objectives forward. The third thing that the county did was hire a lobbyist. And that lobbyist was so effective that he was able to get us into the highest ranks of 2 federal agencies, certainly set up meetings with our congressional delegates, and even got us into the West Wing of the White House. And so I know that, again, the county and the BoCC has hired a lobbyist in Washington to start pursuing some of these ideas. We think that there's opportunities to look at other companies or organizations to join in that effort to provide some additional expertise to be able to get into those halls of the FAA and also with the Secretary of Transportation. I mean, that's how you get things done. That's how we got things done with the Thompson Divide. The county also put together a series of community meetings, including industry, to be able to ask and answer questions. And I think lastly, the opportunity, as John mentioned briefly, is to be able to negotiate with the airlines. Get them to be partners with us, and perhaps we could do that, or the county could do that by providing some incentives. So those are the strategies that I think the county should be looking at. This is really strategic planning versus long-range planning. And I guess what we're here today is to ask you to reaffirm what you passed in that resolution in 2020, and also to commit to, as you're going into your 2025 budget session, to put in line items, budgetary line items, specifically to be able to do what we just talked about: full-time staff, lobbyists, negotiations, meetings, trips to DC. I mean, that's how we're going to get this done. It wasn't easy with the Thompson Divide. We had to deal with two different federal agencies. We had to fight against the oil and gas lobby industry. I mean, what larger industry is there versus, except maybe the NRA? But we got it done. So here's a path. So we're asking you to reaffirm that commitment, to look at your 2025 budget, and include that in as part of that budget process.
Right. Thanks, George. Are you ready for questions, comments, back and forth?
Whatever you like.
Okay. I'm going to open the floor to see Patty has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. I will be going, hopefully, back to DC in March to further the investment with NACO, to try and move that one resolution about using airport revenues off airport property for such thing as sustainable aviation fuel or solar or whatever, something having to do with climate mitigation efforts, and try and find out what the next steps are, going up that chain of command in DC. Working with the lobbying firm we have there, who has the connection with NACO from past history. I'm also going to be looking at, between now and there, joining onto the NACO policy group related to energy and environment. Transportation is an easier group to deal with. The energy and environment group is a little more difficult. And they some of the members of their policy group asked me to consider getting on with that. It's not just a few people, it's a representation across the country. So I'm looking at doing that. And John, I think we have that already planned within budgetary for 2025. But as far as continuing the efforts that were brought forward by our community, I think that the board would need to talk, of course, more about that, but kind of using the Thompson Divide effort as a template, and how we can make sure we get these things done. But I do have a question for John. We hired a new airport employee that's kind of overseeing those focal points of the vision committee, those 4 focal points. Right now, is that a position we could expand to help us pursue those energy, the environment, those points about carbon emissions and noise and pollution?
Yeah, so that role is a little bit more on the operational side of those. I think the skill set around working at a national level on policy may be a little different, but I do think we may have some internal resources that may be sitting outside the airport. We may look more towards our climate action.
To Michael?
Yeah, and such, to work with our lobbyist, Cozen O'Connor, on really would be a multi-year strategy, not unlike what I think is being suggested here, to try and earmark for studies that would set the stage for what's possible and feasible to really help the FAA achieve their own goals, right, of net zero impacts by 2050, and see what opportunities that can open up for us to take a next step in forwarding the Vision Committee goals in terms of changes that may be sought during the FAA reauthorization. But I do think we can seek either some internal staff who can help guide that conversation or track that conversation more consistently than what we've been doing with really staff in the manager's office at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Other comments, questions?
I was wondering if you could give us an update on what's happening with sustainable aviation fuels. I know we talked about it recently. Maybe you could fill these guys in on where we are with that.
Yeah, and that's well, Rich is on, so I may defer a little bit, but we have put in a grant application with some unlikely partners with Mesa County and Eagle County and Pickens County to the Department of Local Affairs to assess the feasibility of SAF production on the western slope of Colorado. There are multiple technologies that we're looking at, including waste to SAF models, so municipal waste, as well as agricultural at different scales. And we are excited because we actually do think there's some real possibility, and everyone's put some skin in the game there. So we are waiting to hear back on that grant from the state. But we have started working together to look at how we can develop that infrastructure here, because I think one of the things we've run into is, of course, there's one source right now for sustainable aviation fuel, and it has to be trucked a long way to get here. And so that's a major piece of the pie, but there's more in terms of our ability to generate revenues or use revenues generated at the airport to offset carbon impacts, as well as to reduce those carbon or greenhouse gas impacts that are the direct result of aviation. And so I think we're aligned in terms of the goals and have been trying to forward. But I think what I'm hearing is a more visible effort with an identifiable point person for the next few years. And I at the board's direction, that's something I think we could deliver on.
Great, can I just real quick
Please do.
tag on? Yeah, and John, when you're talking, waiting for the next reauthorization of FAA's bill, their legislation, John, I don't sure remember that when we were fighting Superfund, we were able to have things done sooner than reauthorization through rulemaking and policy, but mostly through rulemaking to amend CERCLA, which was the law that governed Superfund. So there's an opportunity there. But thinking about what you just said about the partnerships for possible sustainable aviation fuel refinery efforts, those are good partners I need to probably talk to, going back to NACO, to get them to support the effort to be able to use revenues off the airport property.
And
That's a
if
good
I
idea.
could just add, so Patty, thank you, because I was talking about the FAA reauthorization as kind of the end game of those efforts.
Right, but you can actually
there are
make
lots of
amendments to it
steps.
before it's reauthorized.
Yeah, there are lots of steps between, and that's where our lobbyist, Cozen O'Connor, will help us navigate those waters.
Kelly had a question, and then Francie.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to see you both. I appreciate all your work. Thank you. Sorry, Andorra. I want to just ask, I guess, a little bit for some clarity because, I think what we've heard from the visits to Washington and such is, get on the same page with the FAA and we're ready to champion your projects. So I just want to understand some clarity from you related to the request. Is it about figuring out the sticking points, advocating on our sticking points with the FAA, or is it about like getting the FAA to champion the project for funding? I would like to understand that a little bit more clearly.
When you say.
Because I do think the Common Ground had recognized that there was going to be some give and take and some negotiation and some need to flex on the project. So it would help me.
When you say get them to, did you say get them to champion our project? Is that
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say our project, you're referring to the current airport plan,
Right.
I assume.
That reflects
That is
the
correct,
Common
yeah.
Ground
Yeah,
as
yeah.
amended,
So
given recent.
the Common Ground recommendations are big, they're huge, and they are very much long-term, and they're not all going to be implemented at the same time. If I understand correctly from talking with county staff, the airport, if it gets a green light, if it gets the funding, if it gets all the approvals it needs, this is a massive project and it's going to take years, like anywhere from 5 to 9 years. It's a long, long time, if I have heard this correctly. So what I would say is there's the project and then there's the project. I mean, the project immediately before the county is, I actually don't want to devolve into a discussion of FAA funding and the airport layout plan and all of that. You guys are facing that now. There's a lot going on with all that. We recognize that that will play itself out, however it plays itself out. And we all have views on that, which I'm not here to express today unless you wanted me to, but I think that's off the subject. And I'm seeing a shaking of head from the chair, and I agree with you. I think what we're here saying is that we would and will be making this request. There's an election in November. We all know about that. We're making this request way beyond November. Whatever happens in an election in November, this request does not affect this request at all. The need for a green airport does not change, regardless of the current ALP, whether this gets approved today and moves forward immediately, whether it gets delayed and is fought over, more time is delayed and lost. It really doesn't change the importance of climate change, the importance of mitigating the climate emergency, and the importance of cleaning up our airport, which is what this is all about, just speaking personally for myself. I don't know if I'm directly answering your question, but
No, it's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Do you
appreciate
want
it.
to add anything to that?
Well, and John can probably speak to this, but the long term in terms of being able to work with the FAA in terms of their current rules and regulations, for us to be able to change, John always says it's probably just a sentence here or a sentence there.
Can be.
That's going to require a concerted effort from the county, from a coalition, from a lobbyist, hopefully from the airlines to get that accomplished. So that's a long term, but it's strategic.
No, I appreciate that. My observation has been that the reauthorization, legislation is not moving in the directions that we might want it to. In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. And I don't think we're very organized to be meaningfully impactful there right now. I think that's a huge opportunity.
Just to sound redundant, I apologize, but it really is. This is a long-term effort. This is a minimum, I would guess, minimum 3 years of work in DC and around the country. It may require putting together a large coalition, not just of counties. Counties is a terrific start, but cities, locally owned airports by municipalities and by counties around the country. And there's a long list of such organizations that have been formed to work at local levels around airports across the country on issues like greenhouse gas emissions and noise. There are a lot of them out there. What I have not seen is anybody organizing them all together and to speak with a common voice. That would be a powerful moment. Sooner or later, someone's going to do that. I think that'll be a powerful moment when it happens. And last thing I'll say, just to go back to what you brought up, 1991 and the Smuggler Superfund site. Talk about, I mean, we could not, I don't think it's possible to overstate the impossibility of what we achieved. Patty and I and other people supporting us, but you and I were the leaders of that, and everyone told us that was impossible.
Can't do it.
The
so-
county attorney had said impossible. The city attorney had said impossible. Attorneys that we consulted with in DC said impossible, don't even think about it. No one in history had ever stopped an EPA Superfund record of decision. It was final, it was signed, sealed, and approved, and the bulldozers were ready. And we did it, and we did it with
John
a...
chained himself to the bulldozer on Main Street.
It was only a threat. We did it with an incredible amount of hard work and finding unexpected allies and unexpected places around this community and in DC. People stepped forward that we never imagined would step forward. Funny things happen when you set off on a path like this, and it's a good path, and truth and justice are on your side. People come out of the woodworks to help. I mean, it was extraordinary how
And
that
we did it as a
happened.
united community.
We did,
And
absolutely
that's
united
key to any
community.
effort we may want to take on from here on out.
And sooner or later, I believe this community is going to unite. Whatever happens in November,
Hoping
I think.
sooner than later.
Let's hope it's sooner. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again.
Francie?
A couple of things. I have a question for you about having Michael work on this. Does he have time to work on this? Is this something that would fit comfortably into his work schedule?
Well, I think at the board's direction on this, we let us go back and work on a game plan, because I want to be sure that we're applying the right skill sets and that we're answering these types of questions, Francie. And if there is a resource need, then we can bring that well thought out back to this board.
Okay. And then my other comment is just, it's like everything you said, and that is our traffic issue, which is not unassociated with the airport. So, so far we're looking at things that happen at Brush Creek, and then the AABC, and the lumberyard, and the airport, and the entrance to Aspen as separated issues. They're all one issue. So for me, I think that between the county and the city and our citizens, that it's time that we figured out a vision that is more all-encompassing so that we can move forward on all of these things at one time. And so one of those is the changes to the airport now and possible improvements on the traffic there. But, whatever we improve with the traffic there is still not tied to the lumberyard and the AABC and all of that. So I would just say that I would, if we come forward with ways to mitigate issues at the airport and to bring the airport up to future standards, that we include a vision for all of the ground, what do they call it? Ground transportation, associated with the airport and everything around it.
I mean, one of the opportunities, Francie, is, again, getting into not just the FAA, but the Secretary of Transportation's office.
Yep.
We were able to get into the Secretary of the Interior's office, and we were able to get into the Secretary of Agriculture's office. So, and have staff present, because the top level staff, they're the ones that draft the policies.
Right.
And it goes up the chain. So if you get the staff supportive, there's a good chance you're going to get the secretary supportive. So when you talk about all the transportation, where does that fall? That falls under the Secretary of Transportation. That's why we need to get into that person's office.
Well, Greg has an opportunity, I think, for us to
We've been-
follow up on.
Yeah, we've been certainly working on that, and we've got some good leads on that, and we've been in their office
Yeah, we were
already
just
on
there.
behalf of RAFTA, and they certainly know we exist, and they like us, and they trust us, which is great to know, that the compliments we get for one, it was a RAFTA meeting, but they were saying, we know what you guys are going to bring to us is good work, and you're going to deliver for the money we give you. It was so supportive. So that part's been good. And we do have lobbyist connections and people who've worked with them. I do know that they're saying that the SAF funding is really big now, and there are great opportunities for SAF funding, so we should certainly be going after that. I wanted to come back to a couple things you brought up, which are intriguing. They're always intriguing. One, I don't know if you want to talk about details of negotiations with airlines. What's possible? We don't have anything written, or it may be written down, but it's not like there's a contract or a proposal. Right. But what are the negotiations you're thinking of? How do we incentivize the airlines to do what we'd like them to do?
Bless you.
I'm thinking, what do I want to say in front of a microphone?
Picking favorites or something.
Just
Right.
ideas.
Yeah, so here's an idea. I mean, my understanding, I want to be very clear, this is my understanding. I'm not an attorney, but this did come from an attorney who lives in DC, not here. My understanding is that the FAA has pretty much, if not total, pretty darn close to total control of the air side of the airport. My understanding is that they do not have that control over the land side of the airport. So, for example, it might be possible to structure airline agreements, a contract with airlines that would maybe say something like, we have 6 new gates in our terminal. And these are real gates, not paint on the tarmac, real gates with jetways and all that from the second floor of the new terminal. We have 6 new gates, which is what your resolution calls for. Expandable to 8 if demand requires. So you start off with 6 new gates. Maybe you say, what airlines would like to rent these gates with long-term contracts, 5 or 10-year contracts, and maybe there's a provision in the contract that says no more than, I'm really making this up, okay, for God's sake, do not quote me on that.
Tell the press.
Because it would be wrong. But
Quoting you, by the way.
I know,
Sorry, quote marks.
but how do you have brainstorming sessions without?
I think you just propose
Putting your
negotiating with the
foot in the
airlines
mouth.
and incentivizing them to do what we want them
Yeah,
to do.
exactly.
Right?
But there are thank you, Greg. That's a good one.
That was very
But-
well stated.
Let me say, we, the county, I mean, we, the people, you, the county, have the ability, if I understand correctly, to lease by contract things at the airport. Those things include gates. Right now, my understanding is they're not leased, they're just there and they're used by the airlines. They could be leased. They could have airline names on them. They could be exclusive for certain airlines. And you could ask airlines, are you willing to bring planes to this? If we're renting you 2 gates right here for 5 years, are you willing to bring the kinds of airplanes to these 2 gates that fit our community values? Simple as that, maybe, you know? I mean, that's an example. You asked for an example,
Yeah,
there's an
thank you.
example.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I'll let you off the hook. Steve has been waiting to ask a question or make a comment. He's in a van in a Walmart parking lot somewhere in Alaska.
With his
No,
snow
I'm
clothes.
actually in the garage, the same one we slept in a couple of winters ago in Fairbanks. And we can see the airport, Fairbanks Airport, from up here on the hill, looking down on it. When a big jet takes off several times a day, we can hear it from here, about 5 miles away.
Wow.
So it seems to me that some of the goals that we would like to achieve could be achieved through changes in the tax code. Perhaps to incentivize the types of general aviation planes, but it also could be incentivizing the airlines to, get the type of commercial planes that we would like. So you can accomplish a lot with changes in the tax code just to get the desirable results that you want to achieve. Now, getting that accomplished is tricky because it involves getting something passed through Congress, and right now Congress has been fairly dysfunctional, but there's still glimmers of hope of bipartisan efforts to accomplish goals that are desirable for the people of the United States. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, that, changes in the tax code, not just in FAA rules and regulations, are something that we might need to be working towards in the future.
Thanks, Steve. Thoughts, comments, response?
I think that's an
We're good?
interesting approach.
Yeah. I want to summarize. I had some other questions. I want to just cut to what I think are the most important ones. One is your point that today what we have is a noisy, polluting, unsatisfactory airport. We have a level of service, arrivals, what are they called, completions, that is pretty low. It's funny how, it really isn't a satisfactory situation. And I think virtually everybody wants to try to make it better. And we're all aligned on that, everyone in the community, whether they're on, for or against, or it just seems that we all kind of share the same goal. How we get there and what we'll be required to do by the FAA may be the sticky points, right? To summarize, for action items, George, I appreciate where you brought up regarding using the Thompson Divide as a model, a dedicated person to it. I love that. Looking to the other regional partners to work with, national partners, lobbyists. We do have lobbyists. There are others out there who might be able to add more to it regarding whether it's sustainable aviation fuel or getting to Secretary Buttigieg. Community meetings, we were talking about that yesterday with Dan Bartholomew and Jeffrey Woodruff, and I were briefing with Dan, and we talked about how we really do need to get more community meetings out there because there's so much emotional energy tied to all of this, and there's clearly a lot of information that's gone missing, I'd say. I'll put it that way. We talked about negotiating with the airlines. I just want to make sure I'm summarizing this. Your offer to the airlines, creating a budget for it. The commissioners can certainly talk about that. And then going back to NACO with Patty, March 25 is our next opportunity with NACO.
That's their legislative conference in DC.
Right. And the last reso, one of the reso, you took 2 resos from us to them, resolutions for proposed draft resolutions. They accepted one.
They accepted the one about using airport revenues off-site. That's moving forward. The other one, the carbon fee or tax, I withdrew because it could be in conflict with the policy committee's platform. So we're looking into that, what that means to have to try and change the platform to bring that resolution back. So rather than have it denied, I asked that it be withdrawn.
Right. And so that's where we're going to work with our lobbyists and our connections. And you've already started doing that.
John and I have been working on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Steve mentioned changes to the tax code, which merits further exploration. I wanted to ask you one last thing, and that was, we have the vision statement, which is, I think, burned into everybody's memory. We can all recite it. The list of recommendations, the long list of recommendations. And 4 years in, how does that look to you now? Is there anything regarding what's obviously going to work, what might not work, where, are you feeling comfortable that we're still
I am.
Everything's still possible?
Everything has taken longer than any of us wanted. I mean, we lost a year, 2 years, pick a number for COVID.
Right.
And, dealing with a giant federal agency and dealing with a community that's not 100% aligned on the next steps with the airport. I mean, everything takes longer. But given all that, yeah, I think you guys are doing the right things. You're heading in the right directions. I'm delighted that so far, if I understand correctly, so far I forget the number. I do not remember how many there are, specific recommendations made by.
14?
Well, those are areas, but, I mean, there are 14 kind of areas, but then there are a bunch of specific things under, more granularly speaking.
Right.
There are multiple under each of those. I want to say it's 50 or 60 altogether, but if I understand correctly, none of those are off the table. In other words, they're still being pursued. I don't think anything I'm looking now at John to see if anything has been found impossible.
I think the only thing that really changed right now was the location of the runway. And then,
And we understand that.
yeah, and then the design aircraft was changed from the A220-100 to the A220-300.
But that doesn't, that was done by the FAA. We understand that as well, but that doesn't affect our goals in terms of the entire thing we're talking about here today. So I think everything that we recommended is still on the table, and that's really good news. And my guess is that things will begin to pick up in pace soon.
Thank you for that. My question for the community is, if not us, who is going to do this?
Right.
And you know, I think it's pretty clear. I've had the people who wrote the IRA tell me that they're not going to meet their climate objectives. The FAA will not meet their climate objectives. And what we've proposed, and Patty's proposed, and Francie in DC, and I have, I think we all have at the time, is let us help you. Let us help you meet your objectives. We think the best possible scenario to move forward trying to help you meet your climate goals. And it's ambitious because it's a federal policy, but we have to work on being with the SAF regulations and being able to use enterprise funds off-site to do, whether it's SAF or solar or whatever. So I think that we have a compelling argument, and I hear other people repeating it back to me now, that you're not going to meet your climate goals, the feds aren't, let us help you, let us be the, at the front of this. And so with that, I think we're going to need to close it out. Thank you for coming, but I appreciate your request that we reaffirm this, and this is inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Be clear, so we're given kind of staff direction to look at internal resources we might have now and where we might need to go. Since we can't vote to approve it, we don't have anything before us.
Yeah, thank you, Patty. That is my understanding coming out of this, but it'd be good to have that confirmed by the board.
I'd like to ask if the board would support looking at and possibly engaging other, research, lobbying, consultant, advocacy staff outside of our organization so far.
Yeah, I think we need to probably run it by who we have currently to see what areas we might need assistance in.
It'd have to be complementary, yeah.
Yeah, to be working together.
But I think that's the direction we want to move, is what I'd like to ask if you agree.
Well, I'd like to see what we have first.
Yeah, before we open up any
Okay,
other doors.
there's that.
I just wanted, I'm sorry, did you want to finish?
Well,
Yeah,
let
no,
me
I-
take my poll, just so we're finished the thought.
No, I totally support that. I think it would help if we had a strategic plan related to the policies that we would want to pursue on this, to help clarify,
Right.
Yep.
the actual, like, what is it that we want to
I
get
agree.
done? What are the avenues that have to get changed? Who are the players that
Key
are
players.
involved in that?
Steve has his hand up. Francie, do you mind if he goes, or do you want to?
No, if he wants to respond to your
Steve,
question,
go ahead.
that's great.
Yeah, I think that, we need to obviously talk with the consultant we have, but I have a feeling they're working more with our negotiations and communications directly with the FAA. Having a separate lobbyist who maybe was working on a broader scale, working the halls.
Uh-oh.
No, John, I think we can
Turn off
clarify
your
that.
camera, Steve.
Might be appropriate.
Yeah, thanks. You were just breaking up, but I think we heard, we got a yes, I think.
We're already working with other
Well,
Well,
entities.
and I just want to clarify that the lobbyists that we have, they are heavily engaged with the legislative delegation as well as the FAA. It's not just, Greg, I think what I hear you asking for is how we can engage more firepower, particularly on the environmental policy area. And I think that's a conversation that we could bring forward along with what Kelly's suggesting. What are those steps? Because we do have that game plan right now as far as how we step into this, but I think we need to bring that back to the board and we can talk about that. I don't know that I'd engage different firms right now. That can be very confusing
Sure.
for our delegation and for the folks that we're speaking with. And so we want to make sure that that's coordinated and we're speaking with a single voice as much as possible.
And as far as working with municipalities, that did come up when I was in DC. So somebody said, why aren't we opening this? And it was very clear from the crowd, the powers that be, that the NACO only has control over counties. But that being said, there was interest in reaching out to municipal leagues to see, because it too will affect them. So that door is being opened.
Plenty of work to do.
It's a lot.
Francie?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask both of you, is there some formal way you want us to reaffirm the common ground recommendations? Or are you looking for a thumbs up from us? What would you like?
Well,
We already have the
yeah,
reso.
we already have a resolution. I think we're asking for a little bit more from the resolution because we're asking for budget line items. So I think a thumbs up, if there's a consensus, that would be great. It'd be great for John and 100 people, over the 100 members of the community that work so hard on getting this to where we're at today.
Well, I'm willing to reaffirm our commitment to the common ground recommendations.
I certainly am. Go ahead.
I think I would like to, which I think we've done, give direction to staff to bring us back something in a more formal way that we can look at as far as staffing and funds and how we go about next steps.
Great, thank you. Steve, are you okay? We don't see you, but you might we hear you, I hope.
Well, I think having, perhaps what we want to do is take some of the line item things and make them priorities, things that we need to be working on more now, and that might be a way to approach this. So common ground recommendations tackle 2 or 3 of them that we maybe haven't really started working on yet, but we can be putting more effort into with staffing back up on it.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, I think we've got a pretty clear idea from the board. I've seen at least 3
come back.
thumbs up. It's going to come back to us, so thank you.
Real quick, I just want to reiterate and reinforce our appreciation for the community effort that moved forward, and it was across the board. It's people who don't usually sit at the same table, sitting at the same tables. 134 people, John?
121 is what
Oh.
we started with, yeah.
You sure there weren't 100? I think there were hangers out in the back of the room. But, yeah, and how much we appreciate the fact that truly was a community-wide effort. And it was a lot of time and energy and input, and I think we all really appreciate that.
Great, well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for
guys.
coming.
Looking for
Glad
a
you got
squirt
here.
gun for you.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, see you, gentlemen. Thank
crew.
you.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
I
keep, we're gonna keep moving. We're a little bit behind on our agenda, but that was worth it. Right now, we have an update on funding requests from nonprofits. That's kind of an endless living document, isn't it?
Excuse me, guys, well timed. So we had originally, when we had scheduled this, excuse me,
John's getting all choked up over there.
and all choked up, yeah, goodness. Originally, when we had scheduled this, we also had Lift Up scheduled, and we did not know at that time about the specific requests coming forward from Snowmass. Lift Up did have to reschedule to August 20th, but we went ahead and kept some time on the agenda today. If the board did want to at least start having some conversations about the requests that have been in front of you. The memo that we provided was very basic in terms of just noting the dates and the requests that have come to you so far. I think what you'll find with the Little Red Schoolhouse is it's probably outside of this to some degree. I think there's, you all already made some commitment through ARPA. I think what they are going to be looking for are opportunities for us to partner on grants and, maybe partner further and match depending on what happens there. In particular, I think the board's aware that we, have engaged a firm to help us with grants, and they will not work with other entities within a certain distance, and that may be an opportunity for us to support snowmass and such. So it may fall outside of this 200,000 when you have that conversation, I believe, next week. But you have received a presentation from Habitat for Humanity that we can talk about a little bit more. EPIC, English in Action, and then Lift Up will be coming August 20th. I know there is also some confusion about what we've set aside and such, so I just want to be really clear that in this year's budget, we've appropriated $200,000 for the board to be able to allocate for these types of capital. There really aren't strings. It's almost discretionary. What we had talked about at the time when we put the budget together, and I'm sorry, I've got a frog in my throat here, is that you were getting more and more nonprofits coming to you with more capital-oriented requests that specifically aren't allowed in the Healthy Community Fund, which is typically, the place that we'd point our nonprofit partners. In fact, we fund 75 nonprofits, I believe, out of that fund right now. But these requests that were falling just outside, you're trying to find an avenue, and it had been our practice previously to really just have every nonprofit go through the Healthy Community Fund process and the grant review process. Well, not all these requests fit, and so that's where we put the $200,000 in place that's really to be distributed at the board's discretion right now. And so we did have in June and July and now coming up in August some presentations and really want to get an idea how the board wants to approach allocating these.
Right.
If the board wants to wait till you've heard everything, we can make this a shorter meeting, or we can have that conversation right now. So I'd
Okay.
turn it back
Great.
over.
Well, let me preface it, and then
Okay.
I'll get to you. So this is capital. We're looking at capital improvements requests, is what I think I see on all these on our list here, which is Habitat for Humanity, EPIC, English in Action, Little Red Schoolhouse, and Lift Up. Little Red, you just explained, we may just be working as a partner in some ways rather than putting more cash in for the time being.
Maybe
We don't
both
know.
at the
Maybe
end of the
both.
day. Yeah.
Lift Up, we're not sure, but there was for a capital expenditure for their new facility, Habitat for theirs, English in Action for theirs. So this, we're kind of creating a healthy community fund for capital expenses. And I can't.
Without
I'm
a
look-
funding source.
Without much of a funding source. I'm noticing we've got $200,000, which is, what is that? Is that a 20% or 10%? 10% or 5% of what the Healthy Community Fund distributes to all those other nonprofits. So it's a much smaller pot. And I wanted to have a conversation about that to see if we could grow the pot a little bit, because I do want to support these as best I can, and I think it's money well spent. So I'll start by saying that and then throw it back to you.
Yeah, I'm not willing to take more money out of the general fund at this
Oh,
point.
really?
Can you believe that? But that being said, I know Francie has been very patient with us as far as getting this moved forward. So without knowing what Lift Up's presentation would be, we kind of know Little Red Schoolhouse. We know Habitat wants $2 million. I think they've got their zeros a little lengthened from 200,000. But on the 20th, after the Lift Up, we have a presentation about the entrance to Aspen, which may be decided tonight. So who knows? But maybe if we put in time on the 20th to maybe do a divvy up of the 200,000 and get it moving along on that date after we hear Lift Up, rather than drag it out another.
That was the original idea in scheduling it to today, of course. but
Yeah, we thought we'd be
decided to
done
leave this
interviewing, we
on
haven't,
just to-
so I'd rather wait to give
That's a
everybody
good,
that
good suggestion.
opportunity.
Francie?
Yeah, I just wanted to express support for what you've said before about this kind of program. It's sort of like creating nonprofits that are doing things that now we don't necessarily have to do. And so supporting nonprofits as they're getting up and rolling and need some capital expenses support, it is, I think each of these organizations creates a community that is more caring and does it more efficiently than if we try to do everything.
Thank you for that. Steve, we don't see you, but you chime in if you.
Well, can I just respond to that?
Yeah.
These-
Well, go ahead, Patty, I'll
Yeah, but real
speak after
quick,
Patty.
these are not entities that are getting up and running. These are entities that are running.
Well, Epic is still, I
Well,
would
yeah,
say,
but for
still
the most part,
nascent.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of outside of what we normally do, outside of Pickens County.
But what I mean is they're taking these are big steps. That
Well,
are
they're,
taken.
and they are doing a lot of things that not only do we not want to do, we can't do. And I don't have a problem with that at all. I just have a problem with the fact we don't have a healthy community fund to fund capital. And capital isn't 17,000 a year, it's the requests are obviously much larger.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd rather wait until we've heard the lift-up presentation before we make any final decisions, because that would only be fair to them to have them have equal opportunity to present their case. And then at that point, I'd be ready to, start deciding how we want to disperse the money. And obviously, we can't give them all the money that each of them wants. We don't have anywhere near as much as being requested, but I think it's, all the projects have seemed very worthwhile up to now, and I wish we had more than 200,000, but given that's what we have, I think we have to do that as wisely as we can, divvy that up for now in a couple of weeks, but not today.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Kelly?
Yeah, I guess what I'm a little hung up on, and it would help me to understand from the rest of my board members, is if we desire to have any criteria around this, or if it's just, we have some extra money and we can do some good, and that's enough. Because I'm sort of struggling with well, if we have criteria, what is, it seems like we should have criteria, but I don't know what that criteria necessarily would be, or how you would create something that includes or excludes or prioritizes or defines alignment,
We'll just
with
let John
county.
figure that out.
Because I'm just getting a sense of well, we have the money, these are all good things, we don't really need criteria, and that's fine for a moment in time.
Right, a one-off.
So that's what I'm a little
We don't want to make a habit of it, is what I'm
Yeah.
going to say.
Well, and Kelly, I think only the board can come up with the priorities in terms of how you want to use the funding. Staff can recommend a more process orientation. So, for example, there are community partners who are also fielding these requests, whether it be through the Aspen Community Foundation or SKICO, and we do have meetings through Lindsay's department with those entities, and I think it would be, one thing that you could do is run these requests by other funding entities in the community to see, one, if you're doubling up on those types of investments, or if they may have some insights about collective impact, for example, of funding. And so if the board is desirous of that, we can certainly come up with a process. But in terms of your first question, I do think that's one we'd have to kick back to you as far as if there are specific goals or outcomes that the board's looking for.
Thank you.
I
Not
think,
so
Steve has a hand up.
okay, no, don't.
Hey, Steve, is your hand still up?
No, up again. I think having some criteria, like Kelly suggested, would be a good idea. One criteria might be that, if everyone knew we only had 200,000 and yet the habitat request is for 2 million, it's maybe one of the criteria is you can't have a request that's for more than what we have available for that year. Maybe you get 100% of what we have available, but you can't get 10 times that much. That's putting an unrealistic expectation on us with, you know, thinking that we have deep pockets that we don't necessarily have. So those kind of basic criteria, I think, would be in line for future applications in future years.
Thank you. So moderating the ask to match the donor.
And
Exactly.
if I could make a clarification on the Habitat for Humanity, I think their ask was for housing impact fees originally.
Which we told them they couldn't use.
I had a concern, and I think it was shared, our attorney isn't here, but I think it was shared that, you know, that has to be applied specifically to workforce housing. And so how that translation would occur, I think, was a concern.
Got it. Thank you.
New workforce housing. Yeah,
Okay.
real
go
quick,
ahead.
I agree, Kelly, that we should have, and we should have probably thought about that a year ago when we created the fund. But I want to move it forward for this year. And then if we decide we want to continue a program such as this and how we're going to fund it, we definitely need to have criteria. Rather
And I
than
will
just,
say, I guess my inclination a little bit is like, you know, if there's not sort of direct alignment with, you know, our county goals, then maybe we're like last in funding, you know? Like that's sort of how I'm.
Right.
Yeah, I
It'd be
think
nice to
thinking about-
contemplate all those things.
Yeah, like maybe we don't, you know, we can make funding decisions now, but if we're gonna continue this in the future, like maybe this is like a December decision, you know?
Yeah.
But the money sits there, we get the request, we get a reported update on like, well, do you need last in funding? Like this is what we can do for the year, you know, but.
so we,
I
but,
don't know.
so we have
That's
a
a
process,
possibility,
kind of
yeah.
like we do with Healthy Community Fund, but on a smaller scale, not on the millions.
I think those are all good ideas. I'm going to confess that I like bringing these nonprofits in to demonstrate and show us what their projects are, demonstrate what they've accomplished. Because one, I want to give them a public hearing and I want to get them as much publicity as we can and use this as a forum to do that. I also think it's important to, you know, to educate both our staff and our board about all the activity that's going on in the community. And so it serves that purpose as well. Even if we're not funding them to the extent they'd like us to, we can still offer some value. And so I really want to keep doing that. But maybe we can tell them, as long as their expectations are not beyond our reach, then they're welcome to come in. I do like doing that within reason. We can't spend the entire year doing all 400 nonprofits. We don't plan to do that. But so that was my ulterior motive there. I thought I better just fess that up right off the.
So when
that.
75 nonprofits come in and want time next year, Kelly, since you'll be
You'll
chair,
be the
you gotta
chair,
figure
yeah.
that one
No
out.
problem. It'll be at the discretion of the chair.
Did that happen when I was gone?
Yeah, we appointed
Yeah, I
you.
did.
Okay, is there any more on this? I
That
think
happens.
we're ready to move on.
Is when you had that frozen screen. An overheated
we
phone.
we're ahead of
wanna
schedule
hold
now.
the discussion until the 20th.
I think that, yeah,
And let's just see if we can
You
see
mean the
what,
comparative discussion of the different entities?
right. Now, can we, we've got half an hour.
Can I just suggest maybe we can just send some ideas to John for staff? Like I already have some ideas of like, okay, if you get money 1 year, you can't come back for 4 years, you know, or something like.
Yeah, I don't know, but then somebody will come along and we'll want to break that rule.
really?
We've got exactly an extra half hour here, almost,
But we,
25
remember,
minutes.
we're gonna add exec and we wanna get
Yeah,
Kelly.
so can we
street corner.
possibly move open discussion up or future agendas or
why I'm not gonna be
something?
chair.
And then we'll break in half,
You're the
25
chair,
minutes.
man. You just do it.
I'm looking at John to see what
Can
he
we
would
take a
like to do.
5-minute and get staff down here for the next one, or?
Yeah, we could take a 5-minute break. I'll go fill my
Or
water bottle.
I do have open discussion I could cover that's substantive that, it's up to,
That's okay.
it's up to the.
You want to do that? We'll do open discussion first and then we'll take the
Yeah.
break.
Okay, so I think the board is aware, we did extend the property tax refund application deadline to this Friday, August 9th. We're up to, I think we're at 121 applications. We had anticipated that there'd be 370 eligible homes, so households. So hoping to reach more between now and Friday. So we'll keep you posted.
Did that go
Have
out
we
to
reached-
caucuses?
It's been out, it's been an ad, it was announced on the radio this morning, so
Have we
it's getting
reached
some
out to those
publicity.
homes?
We haven't reached out individually, no. Those.
I wanted to propose that we analyze, it seems like we missed a sweet spot. We're talking about doing 5 times the poverty level, and for a family of 4, that's 31 and change per year. So we're looking at $156,000 for a family of 4. What we're finding is we're not finding that many families that make under that limit, and they're not coming forth because they don't qualify. That's my supposition. So I think we probably want to fine tune it so we can really have an impact, because it's really great to offer a tax rebate, but if nobody qualifies for it, it's kind of a hollow ask.
I'm not sure that they don't qualify or they're just not paying attention.
But I've heard
figure
from
if
some
you're-
people who know they qualify and said, I don't mind having to pay that tax.
So there you have it. We've got the full range.
There's a full range of,
I know people who would love to be able to qualify, but they make a little bit too much. You know, they're a little bit more, but they're still living frugally, believe it or not, for a family of 4. And so I think we might want to revise that if we're going to make it more attractive or even
well,
possible.
I don't know, we're only doing it for 1 more year. I mean, it's
We've
not
only
ongoing.
budgeted
for 1
for
year.
1 year. I mean, it'd be at the board's discretion whether you want to do another year.
Or what we do with the funds that are left over that we didn't spend. I'm sure we can find something to do with
Yeah.
them, Francie.
Are they designated for this?
If they're unspent, they'll go back into general fund balance. So we have 300,000 total. 100,000 is from up to 100,000 is from Aspen Valley Hospital, and we're just doing it proportionally for each refund. And then this board had appropriated 200,000 at the time. And so if we underspend that, whatever portion of that 200,000 is underspent, we'll go back to our general fund balance, and of course AVH would retain their portion.
Kelly?
Yeah, I just, I'd love to have this program go through and then maybe like after budget, we, I don't know, maybe we carve out the same amount for next year for budget, but then have a more in-depth conversation, just because I think the tax landscape could change if statewide tax measures pass. And also,
Or local tax measures passed?
yeah, I sat in on a really cool presentation with the Lincoln Land Institute, and I'm not getting I may not be getting that totally right, but anyway, they are doing projects with jurisdictions to sort of answer these exact questions about looking at like parcel level data and interrelating it with different databases to sort of assess like if those are full-time year-round homes, if they're vacant, if they're vacant properties, if they're vacation properties, if they're short-term rentals, linking those with different taxing databases. And I think it's something that it's a resource that we could leverage to help us refine our questions and maybe pilot, just sort of test some different policies. Like they could run what a change would look like based on kind of on the ground mapping information. And we might want to take advantage of that.
So how would we move forward on that?
Well, there's been some discussion between some of the CCAT counties. So Summit Eagle and I have been on an email, and we looped in our managers about the resource and perhaps like sharing a contract to do similar research. It's in infant conversations, I would say, but I would, the the amount of the contract that like they said they've done for like big cities has been like 25 grand for like cities of like multi-million people. So I don't think it's like a huge outpouring of funds to pursue it. I just think we have to understand more what it can deliver and exactly what we might want to pose.
And what they found
of
with
it.
those other ones, and we can learn from there.
Yeah. But very, really cool stuff that, you know, and some of that conversation has come out of the law that passed last year that allows jurisdictions to kind of carve out tax rebate for defined populations in a way that's kind of for the, at least within that definition, like universally applicable.
I would love to pursue that, to engage them, because it feels to me like if we only have a 35% or 33% subscription to our current refund, it doesn't tell me there are a lot of people who just don't think they want to get a refund. I think they're not qualifying, or maybe they think the bar is too high, or
maybe
let's
they
figure
just,
out
I
what
have
it
a
is.
feeling a lot of it, they just don't know.
Or perhaps they
That's what I
don't
think.
know. So that's a failing on our part, in my opinion. And I'd like to do everything I can to make sure people realize it's there, because we're looking at more tax increases.
I think there was just
Going
an
forward.
article in the newspaper about it, so people, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
we've had
sometimes
multiple. We've had multiple articles. I was on the radio this morning talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's
And,
only sometimes, you know, you can lead the horse to water. And sometimes they don't read the paper. So,
Well, I would certainly support doing that research so we understand it better.
Yeah. So
Do we need
I would-
direction for that, or do we need board direction to pursue that, or where are you with it?
I don't
I'm
know.
kind of wondering whether we could just send an email out to all these people and say, are you aware that you qualify for tax rebate?
So the problem is we don't know who those people are. We don't have access to everyone's
income
income and what address, despite what some people may think.
But
We
how
just
do you
don't
know
have
how
it.
many there are then?
It's based on analysis. So we're estimating based on income data, household income data in Pickens County. So that doesn't drill down to specific
Individual homeowners.
addresses or individuals. It's de-identified, kind of
Well-
almost like census
Well, one
type
bar
data.
would be APTA. So,
But-
But it doesn't qualify, you don't qualify.
You
for
don't qualify, indeed restricted.
It's just
oh,
for
and you
non-
didn't have your taxes go up for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Another study about,
I'd like to see
what
what
exactly
they,
is,
Yeah.
what is the goal of this study? To do what?
Well, we're promised a tax refund to the community, but they can't seem to get it from us. Whether it's due to they
Right,
don't
well, I know
understand. Well, let me
that.
finish.
Okay.
They don't understand it. They don't qualify, even though they might need it. Or somehow there's a gap in that they don't understand that it's even possible for
Or
them.
they don't want it.
Or the bar is too high. It's possible they don't want it. I think we need to find that out, because it's pretty rare to offer something like that. I have a lot of people telling me they're concerned about increasing taxes. But if they're not taking a refund, when it's presented to them, what's wrong? I'm trying to figure out what's wrong.
Yeah, so specifically the
So
group that you're
I
talking about.
think that this group is doing doing the analysis better. They're looking at like really specific parcel level data.
I heard you say that word before. What do you mean by that?
So like home to home, you know, and like, is this person registered to vote here? What were their taxes from the year prior? Are they receiving mail? Do they have mail forwarded 6 months out of the year? Like they're looking at like are they signed up on a short-term rental registry database, you know, to short-term rent their home? Like they're looking at multiple databases to sort of figure out what the like use is and layer
Steve's-
that. And we can propose questions of like, we want you to layer data that would answer this question for us, and provide that
I'm
feedback.
feeling kind of freaked out Big Brother sort of thing about this, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like, do I really want the county to have something that says how much Rio makes, how much Robin makes, how much I make, what are our
Well, I
taxes?
don't know-
What
They'll
did we
have
pay
that.
last year?
We
How
can't
much
get
do we
that in.
drive every year? How much do we spend on groceries?
Okay, we get the idea. So-
That wasn't the impression of like
Yeah.
what I got from that, but you know, this is like publicly available data or data that
Well, it's
can be
not
bought on
collated
a
in the
marketplace.
Side conversation.
Yeah,
Hello,
sure.
hello,
The
Kelly
end of
and
this for now.
Francie. Could I just end the side conversation? I'm gonna get back to
Sorry,
John.
she wanted
Why?
to.
Right, because
Why can't
you're,
I ask her about this study? I don't understand why you're
well,
shutting this down.
you're
I'm
drilling
trying
this
to
down
figure it out.
because we have a lot of other ground to cover and John's trying to say something.
So
Thank you.
I was just going to offer that Kelly had put us in the managers from Eagle, Summit, and Picken, as I recall, on an email chain for us to evaluate this. I'm going to be asking our resiliency folks to be looking at this information resource, for the type of analysis we're doing on housing and affordability and those sorts of things, because that's really where the value comes. Does it give us better information than what we based? It may be that the information we're using, right, to say there's 320 households is not good
Might not be right.
information, right?
That's what I
It
was
may
gonna
be
ask.
less, it may be more. And so, we may be learning something by the fact that we have 120 households applying for this program. But I think what Kelly's saying is this is a group, they used to call it psychographic data or all kinds of, where it's publicly available information or easily purchasable information that then gets packaged and reported in ways that are meaningful, that we don't have time. Like when we put this program together, we didn't add staff. It's our economic assistance staff who have other full-time jobs that are running the program. So we're not drilling down and trying to find the people and that sort of thing. We did do a lot of outreach. I think the papers have covered this. I'm looking at you, Josie. I hope you covered it. I'm going to go look now. That it's been covered several times. I know it's been on some PSAs and those sorts of things. So,
So can I ask Jody?
But that's kind of what I was talking about, is
Well-
the collation of this data
yeah.
is
Robert's
very
Rules of
invasive,
Order.
I think. It's one thing to have it out there on many platforms.
Don't know it.
It's another thing to collate it at the granular level about individual households.
Right. So we'll look at that and we can bring it back to you all for a recommendation, because it would require an appropriation and probably an intergovernmental agreement with the three entities.
Could I also just ask to look at what would the effect be if we did 6 times the poverty level, for instance?
Well, without this information, we're not going to know the answer to that question.
I mean, what I wanted to know is what would it cost us? What would it cost out of our general fund? Is it
Over the
so
amount
huge
we've
we could
already
never
allocated.
consider it? Or, I'm just wondering, can we look at a chart and say, maybe we raise it a little bit and it makes a difference, or maybe it doesn't, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll raise
Can
my
I
hand
ask you a
again.
question about that?
Patty was first and
After
then you.
Patty.
John, how did we come up with the 300 and some odd? We had something we looked at. So what's
Well-
different than something
100 from
we
the call.
think we need to look at?
It was a little bit about keeping the budget balanced, quite frankly. When we approved the budget, this is coming out of general fund in this case.
So if we change the
And then-
parameters, as Greg has mentioned, then we may be 3 times the budget that we've allocated. So that's something we need to take.
Yeah,
into
I mean, I think we can plug it into the spreadsheet. I think the concern is going back to our discussion that we're using, really federal data sources at this point that are generalized as to household income. We may be overestimating or underestimating the number, so there's going to be
estimating.
risk. Yeah, we're
That's,
estimating.
it'd be nice to take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you,
is the
Francie.
limit is like $2,000, right, of rebate value?
Right, and so that'd be another trigger to pull that may have disincentivized folks. It's $50 to $2,000 basically on a sliding scale. Yeah.
So if we're talking about somebody who makes $180,000 and we don't know how much the increase in the value of their house would be, so it's commensurate with that, right?
Correct.
So if your increase in taxes was, I don't know, several $1,000s, I don't know. I feel like $180,000 is really a lot of money to be giving tax subsidies to.
156 is.
I agree. I mean, we're so out of whack here in this valley, it's hard to put numbers on things.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Well, that was the easy one
Yeah.
that I had for you all.
So is this where we give direction to staff to,
To look into
to,
this?
John's gonna
no,
follow
to
up.
write a ballot question, but Rye's not here.
No.
We do it in open discussion
We're
today.
doing it in open discussion
Or future agendas.
for future agendas to direct staff to create an agenda item for the August 14th regular meeting to add a ballot measure related to the airport.
But do we need Rye here to do that?
No, I just
No.
did it.
Yep,
So
okay, well.
here was what I thought was coming forward, but let me just check with you all, because it's a 2 read, which would have to happen on August 14th, and then the second reading on August 28th. I guess the question is, does the board want work session time then on the 13th prior to that first reading on the 14th?
We need to further discuss that with Raya, I believe.
I believe he advised us to have a special meeting on the 13th.
Exactly.
Right.
'Cause
We're
we
gonna,
can't
as
talk
part of
about
our work
action item.
session, we're gonna call a special meeting with nothing before, with a resolution. He's gonna bring the resolution on the 14th. So on the 13th, thank you, Kelly, it was to have a special meeting to, but
Tweak
without
it.
taking action.
Yeah, to tweak it, because it's an action item, so we can't have it.
He doesn't want us to
part of our
discuss an
open
action
discussion,
item.
Open meeting.
I didn't quite understand it, but that's what he advised
Yeah,
us.
okay, I'll have to talk to Ryan, because I'm
Okay.
not.
So just tell him that
I'd rather you clarify with
But,
him.
don't need
but
it.
13th, 14th, and 28th is,
Yeah,
we'll have
that's
something.
correct.
And if need
And
be,
if we
we
don't need
could,
the time, we won't use it.
we could call a special meeting in between if we felt we needed time before or after the 28th, if we, for some reason, went to another read.
Okay,
He also said that we could make changes to the wording in it within reason on the 14th, if we needed to.
To try to avoid a third reading,
Yeah.
which would push us pretty far.
So if we made significant changes on the 14th, we might have to go to a third reading.
So
Go to the
that's
second reading,
a good
in other
idea to
words,
have-
yeah.
discuss it on
okay,
the-
We'd
so
have
it
to
sounds
continue
like
the
he's
first
looking
and then
at
have a
first
second.
reading on the 13th
Yeah.
at a special meeting. Okay. Okay,
No,
I
on
will,
the 14th. The 13th
Just
is a Tuesday.
clarify.
I'll clarify
No,
with
no,
Ryan.
we're having a special meeting on the
Special, yes.
Tuesday, but we want to direct staff to create an agenda item for the 14th to add a ballot measure for the airport.
Yep, understood.
Okay,
Thanks, Patty.
Okay.
Okay, so we got that taken care of.
sort of.
And then I want to make the board aware, so we have 2 affordable housing units that were previously occupied by community members, so not employees. We have those, different buckets of units. One's in Elk Run and the other one is the ABC. I can give you specific addresses if you want. However, both of them have significant repair and replacement issues that we would like to get started and then bring a supplemental request to the board from the housing fund. The Elk Run supplemental request will be for $133,000. That's
Repair.
73,000 in renovations and repairs. We did have a rodent infestation that, and we have particularly a boiler that's gone out at the board's direction. We're trying to convert natural gas to electric, which requires not only the purchase and installation of the electric boiler, but the upgrade.
Electric boiler or heat pumps?
Heat
This
pump boiler.
Heat pumps are way better than electric boilers.
I don't know if the place has the capacity to put in a heat pump
Right.
in the
Saying that-
space.
we understand that. I think it's been
Okay, it's been
Yeah.
vetted.
yeah.
Is this the 3-bedroom unit that's there?
It is 3203 Elk Run, which I believe is one of our 3-bedroom units. And it has, everything's from 1987 at this point. And so there's a lot of replacement. There's been a lot of rodent damage and that sort of thing. So we are going to renovate and replace the appliances and boiler and such. The other is an ABC. This is a $200,000, so it'd be $330,000. This is an abatement and renovation. This requires full mitigation by taking the unit down to its studs due to mold and then asbestos.
Thought we fixed that one already.
We've had ongoing issues with this one. You are correct. County staff in the attorney's office is working with the HOA for reimbursement on damages because this has been
It
an
was from an
ongoing
exterior
issue
water
with
leak that was
water.
leaking into the unit.
That's correct. And we have had the same issue again. This time asbestos was also discovered in some of the areas that need to be abated. I assume that may not have been before Rich. Sorry, didn't see you on. But this is going to be bringing it down to the studs.
Which I thought we
unfortunately.
did already. We brought
We
down one
did
whole
bring
side of
that.
that building down to the studs.
We did a major renovation on this same.
These are buildings that we
unit.
own and rent out.
Correct. Yeah.
What's that unit worth? We've
lot
already
more
spent
than that.
$500,000 on it
It's
by
gotta
the
be
time
more
we're
than that
done?
to ABC.
Yeah, it is a lot, and that's why we do have the attorney's office involved. But right now, it is not a usable unit.
Is anyone living in it?
No, no
No,
one's
it
in there
hasn't.
now.
We had nobody living in it for over
Is
a
it
year
attached to other
before.
units?
I'm sorry.
Is it attached to other units?
It is attached to other units. Yeah,
It's a condo complex.
yeah.
And we originally bought it for around 325,000. So we're still way ahead of the game on it, for sure. But there's some challenges.
So we bought it for $325,000. We're putting another, with the money we've already put into it, $300,000.
200,000. Yeah.
So it'll be identical to the ones next to it. We can't upgrade to make it more efficient and stuff. It has to be like the other one.
Yeah, that one's on a shared. Yeah.
Okay, well,
So
What happens if we just leave it empty?
I
What
mean
happens
that,
if we sell it?
We can't, we'd have to maintain it.
You-
as
you'd
I mean,
still-
after we fix it.
yeah. I mean, obviously, we're going to be working to get reimbursed
Okay.
for this. That'd be a conversation with the attorney's office.
Did we get reimbursed for the last fix? We were
I
looking at
don't
that
I
at
don't
that time,
remember
too.
I know we had that conversation with the HOA too. Yeah, and I don't recall in this particular unit.
So when
Joys
Phyllis
of
was
being a
on their
landlord.
board, Phyllis was chairman of their homeowners association.
And we worked very hard to get a lot of this resolved, I know. So we would like to go ahead and get started with the expectation that we'll bring a supplemental to the board.
so
What if
you
we
need
say
a
no
thumbs up.
after you've gotten started?
Yeah, thumbs up.
Would
for
be
me.
a real
Thumbs up.
We
bummer
have
for
to,
us.
it sounds
yeah.
like.
Steve, are you okay out there in Alaska land?
He's chasing moose.
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay, great, thanks. So
That's
we've
all I
got a-
had for open discussion.
Great, thank you for that. So that's taken care of. All right, we are at break time. I think we should take our break. Is
What else do we
15
have
minutes
still to
enough or
do?
too much? Want a
10.
10-minute break? And/or we're gonna come back in 10 minutes. We'll see you at
We've got the new
2:40.
workplace.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's Tuesday the 6th, and I'm turning on my mic. It's Tuesday the 6th, and we're back at our meeting and up. We did have one more open discussion item to talk about, and John is in the room.
Just go ahead.
And we're going to get to the new workplace task force next after this, but why don't I start it with that, just to finish this off. Hey, John, you had it on the agenda, and I want to thank you for bringing it up. This is regarding a donation of Pickens County to this new fund at CORE. It's called the Bill Sterling Giving Circle. It's kind of like a fund in Bill Sterling's name at CORE. And they're going to be announcing it on the 14th at the CORE 30th anniversary event. And this is in recognition of Bill Sterling, who was a founder of CORE, along with Randy Udall and a couple of other people. Just forgot. Joni Matranga, I think, was part of it.
She wasn't there then.
Wasn't she there then? Patty knows. Patty was there in
I
the
was
day.
chairman for 10 years.
Right, Patty was the chair of this group for 10 years. And so we're going to be announcing it. You know, Bill Sterling has been a model citizen, not only as a former mayor of Aspen, but he's been involved in so many good things ever since he was mayor. And so that's how this has been brought forth. And I don't know who put this on the agenda.
We were
but thank
teasing
you.
Bill the other day about his fur ban. Remember when he went through the fur
When
ban?
they were doing a fur ban,
And
right.
when they were doing paid parking in town, and he encouraged everybody to drive by City Hall and honk their horn. Those are two of my favorite Bill
If
Sterling.
anything happened in the town back then, Bill was probably
Yeah,
part of it.
he's pretty fun. But
and-
I was just wondering what kind of contribution you would like us to.
Well, if it's up to me to ask, John, did you have any other background on this? Did I put this on the agenda? I don't-
You did, yeah.
So long ago? Oh, that's embarrassing.
Oh, my God.
Guess we should have talked about this in
Yeah, I
advance.
definitely should have. Yeah, I am fortunate.
I'm happy to talk. I'm
Mike.
happy to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't catch that, actually. No, I don't have further background. I think my understanding is they're trying to put a fund together in recognition of Bill's years of service. Greg, as I recall in our discussion,
Must have been months.
sorry, yeah, it was months ago.
Last week.
That I think you're looking for maybe $1,000 from the board's discretionary fund to allocate towards this, and potentially a recommendation of a proclamation or such recognizing Bill's service.
In light of the fact I wasn't supportive of the last discretionary fund allocation we made, I would like to support $1,000 to Bill Sterling and do a proclamation.
What is the
you.
scholarship going to be used for?
Now, the thing is, I probably mentioned scholarship to John, but I'm not sure that's exactly what it is. It's basically CORE, as we know, has become a nonprofit. It has, it's doing fee-for-service work. It's doing, it's raising money through grants. It's doing philanthropy because we're weaning it off of RAMP slowly, as we've discussed over the years. And so this is probably part of the philanthropic fund, one to bring in members and donors. I have proposed a scholarship, but I'm not certain it's going to go exactly to a scholarship. But it will be given
Yeah, I would
to
like to see it be a scholarship or special projects rather than
I
just
certainly
going
would
into the
support that.
operating funding expenses of CORE. I thought it was a scholarship fund of some sort.
We would have to follow up with CORE.
We'll follow up on that. We'll follow up, because I just don't want to us present it and then find out that the board's gone another direction. I was,
Do you want to perhaps take this week, and then maybe it would be in line
Yeah.
with next week's event?
the event's on the 14th. We can sort it out this week, and we can bring it back.
That would be
certainly.
great, but I would like to support something, but I'd like it to have Bill's name on it rather than just going
And
at a.
certainly, your suggestion for a
Yeah.
proclamation is great, and I really appreciate that. That's
We can do
a good
that
idea.
anytime.
Okay.
coming
That's
back.
fine. Well, if you all support it in principle, then they'll know to put the effort in. So.
Yeah.
We have a yes. We have 3 yeses.
Get back and let us know.
Well, let's not attach a number to it right now until we know what it is. Let's just
Right, okay.
say we're interested in supporting something in honor of Bill Sterling
And
and
then
then
I'll
find
have,
out.
they'll get back
We'd
in
like
touch with
his
us.
name
Right.
attached to it.
And I apologize for not, I was,
If I was supposed to do more research, I
I
apologize,
don't know,
Greg.
I didn't expect you
I missed
to.
on that.
I thought Greg would know that.
I was so busy thinking about the last one with Clear for their conference that this one just got shuffled aside. Don't let anybody know I said that. Okay, thank you.
You're on TV, I hate to tell you.
Sorry.
So we won't tell anybody he just said what he just said on TV.
This is a challenge to see if anybody's listening. I'm getting a charger for Kelly. I think I might have one in
So
this
can we
bag.
move forward?
We
with
can
this?
move on with the next event, the next item. The New Workplace Task Force, thank you for coming in and sitting there, listening to all of us, waiting for us patiently. Go ahead, please.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Melissa Knight, Director of Human Resources, and I have some fellow colleagues with me.
Andriga's Chief Financial Administrative Officer.
Levi Borst, Management Analyst.
And we're excited to talk to you all about the new Workplace Task Force Charter. So, here we go. All right, so a little bit of background for you all. So, we all remember about 4 years ago when we had to flee our building here and suddenly start working from home overnight.
Except for Patty and I, who diligently came in.
Except for you two.
Gave my children
We'll add that to the
and-
background side. And, you know, some of our employees also still had to work on site, obviously. Some of the positions require that. We had an enhanced service benefit with virtual platforms, so some of the services in the clerk and recorder's office started to move online, and people were able to make appointments. We also know that there's been decreased housing affordability. Our workforce has moved further away. And then with inflation, tight labor market, living in a rural area, decreased work-life balance, and longer commute times, we said we have to look at the new workplace because it's different than it used to be. So no permanent adjustments have been made to our workplace yet. So we are here to talk to you about the process that we want to take to kind of go through all of this. In 2023, Internal Services did a SWOT analysis, and a few areas of concern came up. Underutilized office space in Aspen, in the building here. Demand for office space in Mid-Valley, so Basalt at River Park Center. Employee recruitment and retention was quite a concern at that point. Employee work-life balance, I think, is always a concern for employers. There was a big desire for reduced commute times from some of our employees. There also were inconsistent work philosophies, practices, and policies across the organization, and that was really just interpretation of some of that stuff, so things weren't quite as consistent as we would like. There was a really big urge for in-person connections, collaboration, and the ability for people to connect with one another again. And the distribution change in our county population, which you're all aware of. So these are some concerns. Thanks, Ann. A little more data came to us from the employee survey, and there were really 4 areas that came out of themes from that. So leadership and accountability was one theme. Pay, compensation, and recognition. I have to tell you, it's always one of the lower scoring places on employee surveys. So just
Well,
food
it's
for
one of the
thought.
lowest areas of concern?
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
No, the biggest areas of concern, lowest scoring.
Yeah, the way you
Sorry,
said it, I
yeah.
thought it was
Did I
Satis-
flip it?
Lowest satisfaction score.
Yes.
Is that, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
They're
I'm
not
glad
happy
you-
with
I'm
what they
glad you
get
asked
paid.
that question.
If they're happy with what get paid, they just don't get recognized enough. Just kidding.
On-site and hybrid work disparities because of nature of our jobs, and organizational equity and inclusion. So, we got together as a leadership team and really looked into all of this data and decided that we would love to focus on some areas here. Of course, our county values are really important, so we want to make sure that when we go down this road of looking at the new workplace, that our county values are taken into consideration. And then the three other areas that are listed here. So leadership and accountability, that was probably one of the biggest themes on the employee engagement survey. So we want to make sure that we're providing leadership opportunities, making sure folks know what's expected of them in leadership roles, and then holding people accountable to that. Infrastructure, so the orange circle there, that really has to do with our physical spaces, how we do our work, IT infrastructure. Things have changed quite a lot since since COVID. So things are much more remote. There's a lot more access to online services. And then, of course, inclusion and equity. This is a big topic and something that we're talking about as a leadership team as well. But we want to make sure that folks, when they come into our organization and when they're here, that they feel included and feel part of the bigger team and don't feel so siloed. So what we did is we have created a new workplace task force, and we've nicknamed it Newt for short. So Ann and I are Chief Newts, as she calls us, and Levi's our Newt Wrangler, who is helping us really, with the whole entire project. So I'm going to turn it over to Ann. That's going to take you through a few more details.
Do you guys know what a newt is, by chance?
We do.
Okay, I want to make sure. Do you know what they look like?
They're really
Yes, they
cute.
can be really. There are some really cute newts, and I've got some pictures at the yes.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Have to
They
wait.
eat
I'll show
dried
you
flies,
pictures of cute newts.
Vitamin
in a minute.
coated dried flies, by the way.
So as Melissa just talked about, the core elements of our new workplace task force project are the infrastructure, leadership, accountability, inclusion and equity, and of course paying attention to our county values, which are really important. So as we already kind of just went into a little bit of detail, but with the infrastructure, that would be kind of looking at our physical buildings, equipment and technologies, what's the most effective and efficient utilization of them, of all of our infrastructure in this new workplace. And that kind of includes service delivery, locations and schedules, workspace design, and then looking at technologies that we could leverage to improve services to the public. And then the leadership accountability bit is how do we, really manage our employees while maintaining an equal level of service and accountability to the public we serve and accountability of all employees. There's, when you have people working in person, people working remote, that we only have one person who works remote full time, and then hybrid workers. There's questions about accountability and equity and so on. So really to kind of dig into those areas of concern. And so we're pulling together this group of diverse employees that they will build on the work that we already did on the internal services team. And they're across the organization, the employees, we really wanted this to be a project of the organization and not just of us, a leadership, that really the employees will dig in and help us solve the problem. So they'll be kind of looking at the challenges and opportunities of this changed workplace and helping identify recommendations to make it better. And they will, of course, be coming back to you and us, and I'll talk a little bit more about the schedule, but the main purpose of their work is to really look at defining what the new workplace is and how do we get to that point.
Got it. And so, you've got a timeline for you're going to get to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
any
along with the
questions so far
pictures of the cute newts.
Before we go, before we go any farther.
I just looked them up. I couldn't resist.
Oh, you did look at them? They're actually
so
not
cute.
newts, but.
Well, it'd be interesting to, I think I understand, but it'd be nice to have some examples on problems that have arisen through, which have brought about the need for this. I think we can assume we know, but it'd be nice to hear some, for instances, if you have any.
Right. Well, I mean, we have some examples, but part of the work that we want them to do is really define what the problem is, because we, hear things. A lot of it is anecdotal. It comes from employee surveys, from different kind of work that we've done, and we really need to define what it is. But I think an example would be this building being empty half of the time, or just 3 days a week could be full, and then 2 days a week it's not, and then places are oversubscribed, and there's empty desks in other areas. That's a kind of really basic example on the infrastructure side.
And then, Greg, I would add just how work has changed depending on what position you're in, right? And so there's some work that probably hasn't changed a lot, like our road and bridge, for example. There's a similar probably set of tasks and way that's accomplished. Sheriff's Department, even though all of these are going through evolutions in terms of best practice, the new workplace probably doesn't affect as much how those departments are operating. But you go into a human services office or come into our office when staff is there, and we're all sitting there, but we're all on Zoom somewhere else, right? It didn't used to be that way. And so the expectations about how we're a lot of different functions in the county are conducting work now, and what that looks like has changed significantly. And this isn't necessarily a surprise. When we built this building, we actually reduced the programming by about 52% of the suggested square footage over the number of years. And the reason we did that is we recognized that the workplace of the future for a lot of professional roles was probably going to be a login and a coffee shop, right? That's always my dream anyway. But and maybe not a bricks and mortar kind of situation, which is why we built the walls so that they're free span and can change. Now, we thought that change was maybe 2 decades out. We didn't anticipate kind of the disruptive nature of COVID and how it's accelerated that in some areas as we started off the presentation. But here we are. And because we did it in such an accelerated fashion, we haven't dealt with internal equity issues. If you've got to be here and in person, where's the equity all the time with the hybrid work? Or, gosh, if you're on Zoom meetings, back to back to back to back to back at any time, because now that's how we do work. It's having those conversations, and to Ann's point, defining what does equity look like? How has work changed in different parts of our county? And how do we acknowledge that so we're ensuring that we're providing accountability, understanding, and fairness?
Right. Great. Any questions before they continue? I don't see any. Okay, this is fascinating.
So we came up with some guiding principles because we wanted to be sure that this task force was clear on the values that would influence the work that they would be doing. And first and foremost, it's ensuring, we have business continuity, that we maintain public confidence and trust, and we continue to deliver or even improve, superior services to the public. Of course, making sure it's consistent with our mission, vision, values, and goals. Another, important principle is ensuring that our workforce is engaged and productive, and things that would improve for them and not get worse. And then close to Melissa's heart is encourages employee recruitment and retention. As you know, our position in the job market is challenging because of the cost of living in this valley, and how could we, improve upon that. And then working on DEI guidelines, which are coming, I believe, maybe tomorrow. you know, how do we ensure that we have a more fair workplace, and that kind of imbalance between those that have to work in person and those that don't? How do we address that? And then, of course, the county's climate action plan, as you've all made us very aware, it's extremely important to the organization. And so you know, it's to John's point, there are times when I spend an hour traveling to get into the office, and then I spend all day on Zoom meetings with someone else, not at the county, and it's like, this just really doesn't make
Makes
sense. So
Yeah.
we don't have any policies or requirements or, you know, any thought around those kinds of issues, and so that's part of why the guiding principles are important. So this kind of is just sort of a little bit of a repeat of the values, but we really hope to get out of this project, obviously, to enhance delivery of customer services, improved employee engagement, maximization of employee contributions, and increased productivity. And what that means is not that people are not unproductive right now, but how can we help them be more productive by providing a better work environment or technologies that improve productivity. Then we talked about retention, recruitment, work-life balance. Again, you know, me sitting in traffic for 2 hours just so I can go to Zoom meetings is not very helpful to the climate or to my own personal life. Then those kind of inequities between jobs that we talked about. And another item that's close to my heart is the cost-effective use of office space. When we look at the price per square foot of operating spaces and how much use do they get within the buildings and other locations. So the deliverables for this, for the NEWTs, will be in particular a white paper which will first of all define the problem. They'll use the inputs that we've already have, describe the current conditions, and then the gaps between the current state and the 3 core elements that we have decided. And then the second piece of their work will be identifying short-term and long-term opportunities that will create a more equitable and attractive workplace for the future. And so they'll just be identifying those opportunities and making recommendations as things for us to look at. They won't actually be kind of designing them or, you know, implementing them. They'll just be saying, we need to look at this and we need to look at that, and then bring them back to us. And when I say us, I mean leadership as a whole, to make decisions on which ones we move forward with. So, any questions?
I had some questions. Francie, go ahead.
Mine's really quick. How is this fitting into your current work schedules, doing this extra job?
That's why there's 3 of us. But it is actually part of my job as kind of heading up the internal services team, which includes IT and finance and budget procurement and HR and communications. It's kind of across the organization, so that it's part of my job. And then a lot of these things are kind of HR issues, and it's about our employees.
So you figure this is part of your job description, you're just
Yeah.
going for it. And of course, you're analyzing it, and that's your name.
My name.
Okay, thanks.
John, did you want to add something? I've got
I was just going to add to Francie's point that, you know, it is a big project. We think it's an important discussion. It's one that has probably taken too long for us to get to as an organization, but we're here now, and I think we've got it lined out well with all of the directors and elected executive officials in terms of, you know, the approach, and so wanted to make sure you all were in agreement so we can move forward.
This is an example of what makes you an exceptional county manager.
Well, thank you.
I would offer that I don't think we're too late at all, only that we may have needed this much time to even understand what the environment that we're working in. So the things that popped into my head that I think are very important. One is the sense of community. And I think Patty talks about that when everybody's off in a different direction and they're living in communities up to 50 or 60 miles away or farther, you don't get the sense of community, and you don't get the vibe or of what's happening in the culture of the place we're working.
Right.
And it's concerning to me also, because I want Pitkin County's employees to understand what's great about this place. And if they're not even living anywhere near us or recreating anywhere near us and just coming to work, they probably don't have a lot of opportunity to get that. And so that's really important. So maybe it's just the culture of the organization has to make up for that, perhaps, or create that sort of, that workplace that people really want to be part of. And for the most part, I think all of you pretty much like working for Pitkin County, but I'm sure there's some people who just wonder why, why are they making that commute? And I don't blame them. My second comment was just about assessments and management. Managers are going to have a hard time. You're not looking over someone's shoulder. You're not just making the rounds of the office, and so that's an issue. And I'm sure that's part of people's job description, and they've got to figure out how do you manage remotely. We can report remotely, but how do you manage remotely? And then my last one was, this is happening across the entire planet, so there must be best practices emerging, and we don't have to be the probe or, we're not reinvent the wheel here. Have you seen much?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually been developing a Newt library, so a bunch of articles that we found on different ways organizations have tackled this issue, and even just working, looking at the kind of the 4-day business or facility opening schedule and trying to understand what other counties in Colorado were doing. There's a lot of research out there, so that's going to be a big piece of this, I think, is for our Newts to really understand what else is going on, and then learn how which ideas may fit Pitkin County best and fit with our culture, which, as you say, I think is critical here.
Right. Because I think we do have some things that make this community in particular special from so many other places, and we can all talk about what we think that might be. But that is part of the glue that holds us together and makes us proud of the place. Patty?
Yeah, from all my years coming into the office, because I do live close by.
She's old-fashioned.
But we have totally lost a sense of family within Pitkin County. I can't tell you how many times when I'm in the building and I'll ask somebody who looks lost, can I help you? They're like, well, I work here. I'm like, oh, you do? And they look at me like, well, why are you here?
Who are you?
And I'm like, well, when you run into somebody who sits at a desk next to you that's an empty seat, you don't even know who that person is. You don't know their family. You don't know what they like to have for lunch. You don't know really anything about them personally, and we have lost that in Pitkin County, and it's very sad. It's not just fracturing of community, it's fracturing of this family that I hold near and dear to my heart. And I'm really sad about that loss, very sad. And all I was asking for years ago when I realized that nobody was home in the building, my board's heard it a million times, and I'm hoping that in this interim studying year we might have ahead of us, that we can have 2 warm bodies in every office 5 days a week. I know some people don't want to work Fridays, and maybe nobody wants to work on Monday. Figure it out. It's not that hard to rotate. I've shift worked almost my entire life. You can work it out. Because when I come into the office on Friday, my office is open door, green light is on, and there's nobody in there, and it makes me nervous that all of our desks are not secure in there, and there's papers and stuff, and we never know who might be coming and going from this building, especially in today's age of people wandering in and out. So I think that's a concern for me, that if we're not going to have people in the 3rd floor administrative office on Fridays, we have the door locked. I think there's just some safety issues with what's out and available for people. It may not be confidential, but it might be. We don't know. So I would like to see something in the interim, if possible, till we figure out what all the solutions and issues are. Best practices from Timbuktu. Greg's absolutely right. We're different here in Pitkin County, and we just are. It's just the nature of the beast. But just to see if we might be able to have offices open 5 days a week. If somebody wants to come in for a bus pass and there's nobody there, and the lights are off and the doors are locked, or public comes up and they want to speak to somebody and there's nobody home, that's a hard one for me because I see it a lot, because again, I'm in the office a lot just because I can and I choose to be. But as Francie says, I'm also down valley a lot these days, so I'm kind of covered the gamut because that's where our constituents are. But
Thanks, Patty. Francie?
I think one suggestion I would make is that we make the Basalt offices more community-minded. They're like cubicles, and you just go there by yourself, and you don't talk to anybody, and sometimes you have bad internet connection, and it's not a very satisfying place. So if we had people for whom that was their permanent place, I think that might work out better, so that when they went, they ran into other people that they know. I don't know who those employees might be who would be served better by the Basalt office, but maybe something that would make it a little bit warmer and more inviting.
I don't think we have this
Interesting feedback, about a really complicated situation. And this is a situation that's pervasive. This isn't just with Pitkin County. This is with families and neighborhoods. And, imagine how this has changed our entire culture. So I don't want to pick on you guys or on us in Pitkin County, because this is happening everywhere. But Patty makes really good points. And I think your suggestions are worth hearing. I also am really eager to hear what else comes out of it, because maybe there'll be some other, innovative ideas and ways we can kind of rekindle what you're missing.
Yeah, I think, as you saw in the first couple of slides, the areas of concern were lack of the kind of social connection and the loss of ways for employees to, connect that we used to have before this. And then secondly, the actual locations, the county population has generally moved further to the west-north area, and, it's what's the best place for services, to the point of the
I'm not
Basalt
necessarily
office.
sure I agree with that. We have a lot of population at this end of the valley. Maybe it's not full-time year-round residents, but they still need county services. And so we've tried to have an office Mid-Valley years ago. We tried 2 different locations. It failed, but granted, times have changed. But if we're looking at taking over more space in our building that we own, 123 Emma, then we need to take over the whole building. If we're going to do it, we're not just going to throw out the bar and throw out the sandwich shop. We need to provide space, and Francie has a good suggestion, those little cubbies. Kelly uses it a lot. And I was the first person to ever use it to do, believe it or not. And the cords for my computer didn't reach the ground, reach the connections. So it was a learning experience for everyone. But I just have a hard time building this amazing building for the community to have their access to county services and not utilize this building. That's really a tough one.
Thanks, Patty. Well said. I think this is going to be interesting, and you hear what we're saying. And
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I just think about how, what if everybody on the planet was a remote worker? And what does it mean when your friends are all online but not near you? And it seems to be what's happening, and it's changing culture dramatically. So we're kind of trying to deal with a very big river we're flowing down right now. So this is a great step, and we certainly hear what you're saying, Patty, and I agree. I think it's completely worthwhile, so thank you for
I think we
undertaking
need
I
to
have
look
one
at it
more
further.
little question.
Yeah.
Are you going to gather data on how many people are in different departments in person each day, or are you only going to do anecdotal reporting?
I think we'll have to see what the task force wants to do and how they wish to define the problem and what's going to guide them.
It would be really interesting to know where people are and how many of them there are in the building on certain days.
Can I add to that? Would you mind, Francie? And I think that's really good information to have. I also think it's good information to have how many people we've hired and told them they didn't have to commute. I know we've hired some people that may only have to come up to the office maybe once a week, people who provide a service, And I think we need to know that. And there are some people that took a job here knowing they were going to have to commute, and times have changed. And I'd hate it, but you know, my family lives in Southern California, and commuting sucks in Southern California. And at least you have a nice environment you're sitting in here rather than on the freeways out there. That being said, it's still not easy for people to have to get up earlier and commute. You know, I mean, I do it the other way sometimes, and see the traffic and feel the anxiety in people, and I understand that, but Pickens County's county seat is here, and we need to keep that in mind. I mean, I'd hate to think we're gonna move the state capitol business out of the state capitol because the traffic in downtown Denver is so horrible. But they do have light rail there, right?
It doesn't work.
So-
Okay,
Oh
is
my
there
Yeah.
more?
gosh.
This is our
I'll
time.
just
Thanks for
quickly
adding
go
that.
You should
over
ask Steve about whether or not he works. He uses it when he goes down there.
the schedule. So in
the
July,
baseball
we
game.
basically recruited the Newts, and we're going to start work next week with our first meeting. We'll work all the way through till January next year, when we'll present the white paper to the leadership team, and then follow up with you all, and then following that, prioritize some of the recommendations that have come forth out of this particular project, and decide how and which ones we're going to move forward with. So if one of them is like redesign of this building or something, then who would do it?
Who's on the leadership team? I thought we were the leaders. We're not on the leadership team.
Well, we're talking internal, so it's the department directors.
Okay, thanks.
Kelly, question?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if there will be some balancing of like trade-offs. You know, like I think it would be interesting to understand maybe after kind of the data is collected, things start to rise to the occasion. Because like I could see some real trade-offs for people. Like, you know what, maybe I don't want to be friends with my colleagues as much if that means I have to come in more. You know, I like. So
I don't have to like that person I work with, so give me a break.
I mean, you know, quite frankly, like I just think I think it would be helpful to, like, to me, I think there's a reasonable expectation that, like, whatever the menu is, we're not going to do the whole menu, right? So understanding trade-offs on it, or
I may eat
priorities
at a
on
totally
it,
different restaurant for that matter, but.
would be helpful in the end. Thank you.
Right, so I think that's when we get to the prioritization of the recommendations, which are the kind of low-hanging fruit, which are the ones have the greatest impact on the organization and shortest amount of time and all of that. But
Like one thing we could do, another thing we might be able to do, I know we give bus passes, but like for people who come in their work vehicles and stuff, is pay them for their time on the road.
That is something that has been brought up many, many times, but it is a risk to do that, because then if they're on the clock while they're commuting to work and they get into an accident, it could actually be a workers' compensation claim.
Wonder if they get hurt at home making their bologna sandwich and slice their finger in their work time.
So we might have one workers' comp claim a year in exchange for a major equity move?
These
I
are all
don't-
really great questions to ask.
That we could explore.
But we're not taking any of these options off the table. This is part of what we want to wrestle with, and it gets complicated really quick, right? Because of the different layers, which is why we wanted to take this is a really process-oriented approach to try and account for these different circumstances, as well as involve different players and levels in the organization who are impacted by it.
I want to go to Steve next.
Yeah, I see this as really an opportunity to cut down on commuting time and expenses, relieving a tiny bit of the traffic on Highway 82 is a good thing. So we are really part of a grand experiment to try to make this work in the, changing workplace world that we live in. I follow this with interest. I think that making better use of the Basalt offices would be a critical part of this, because having people commute part way to work, they actually end up working in Basalt instead of Aspen, saves a big chunk of their commuting time for people living down valley. So I think if we could make better use of the office space in Basalt, that would be a positive for this. Also, maybe we can come up with innovative solutions on like team connections on the internet, so the teams are working together even though they might be in different locations, and have sort of keep that personal connection. So that might be another way to help make this work.
Thanks, Steve.
So just some thoughts there.
You know, I figured you'd be an advocate for this remote work thing,
Because it's across the street from
calling
his
in
house.
from Alaska.
Oh. Can I just add though to the Basalt office?
Yeah.
We need to keep in mind that people tend to take the bus up here because parking is expensive in Aspen, but at least we have a parking garage up here. In Basalt, if you don't take the bus, there's very limited parking, very
parking's
limited
hard.
parking, because you cannot park at the Basalt Park and Ride unless you're riding RAFTA. The signs are very clear there. So I think that needs to be kept
Even
in
the
mind.
overflow lot?
The what?
The overflow lot?
The Basalt parking lot across the street by the bus stop.
Even the overflow lot for the Basalt Park and Ride?
Yes,
Is restricted to
it's
rafter
signed
riders?
only for rafter bus ridership.
I
Yeah,
wanted to
that
ask,
overflow parking lot.
because I think there's going to be a wealth of information out there. Maybe if you find a journal or magazine articles on the topic, or you're collecting that, and I hope you do, because it'll inform your group, maybe you could share some of that with us now and then, because it's kind of fascinating to see what's happening here, and I think it would help. It really would help, because people are writing about this and wrestling with it virtually everywhere. Kelly.
Yeah. I wonder, it'd be interesting to hear from people about how they would like us to show up in their work lives. I feel like we have until people come to us, we don't have a whole lot of integration. Patty does a good
You
job.
can hang out around the office
barging in to
anytime.
bow-
I even go to the new employee
I
orientation.
remember when I was a
so-
staff, I was like, "What? Who is this lady that just keeps coming in here, chatting with people?" Are they gonna hire her or
Don't wear
what?
my name tag, I guess, maybe. I don't know. So I know who I am at the end of the day.
I'm just kidding. I love that about you, Patty. But I just perhaps there's sort of missed opportunities, for us. Like I'm like, oh, we have an employee picnic next week. Like, should we be showing up in a way that we don't ordinarily to
It's on my
contribute
list for
to that?
later.
At Christmas party. I mean, just like, should we be having more touch points throughout the year? I don't know if this is where this falls into, but. I do wonder if there is just some of that leadership
I think-
aspect of not having enough two-way flow
Yeah.
there.
And I want to see the information, because I think you're going to have good information. I don't want to just see what everybody decided is, this is what we're going to share with the board. This is, because I think the board needs to see what didn't get shared. Because we may feel that what you're prioritizing is great, but we may find priorities that we want to support that are over here that aren't coming to us. And it might be a lot of information, but if Greg wants to read every article you find, please send them on to Greg, and he can sort them and send them on to us, because
I do. I
he
do
does
that.
all the time. That's what I was getting at. But then I don't, I don't want to just see the fine-tuned version at the end of the day. I want to see what options were out there to see where the prioritization was given.
So the prioritization will take place after this has been done. The point is to bring it back
Right.
to the leadership, including yourselves, to help define what determine what the priorities are. So the Newts will be responsible for bringing all of their recommendations of things that might work, and then the prioritization will happen with a greater group.
I've got some great new pictures I'm going to have.
Yeah.
So
You just say
okay.
And as we develop out the process with the team.
Sorry.
No, I want you to finish about the newts for sure. No, but as we build out the process with the team, we want the team to have some autonomy, right, in figuring out their process. But it's sounding like the board may be open and even want some touch points along the way as
Check-ins would
we're
be
wrestling with
great.
stuff. So we can, as we figure that out, we can do that between now and January.
Thank you.
But just to close that out, please don't share any nude photos.
You thought I said nude.
Oh,
I didn't say,
I can't believe you would
No.
say that.
I didn't say it. She
The-
said.
I didn't, I
don't
said
have-
nude.
they
okay.
just,
Y'all
he
better
heard-
close
he
this
chose
up.
to hear.
All right, so very quickly, the newts, basically, we have 17 of them, so we wanted a really good cross-section of employees in the organization. Some of them are subject matter experts in their various fields, like HR, or, we have a good cross-section of departments, divisions, types of positions, people that work in person, people that are remote, some are shift workers, and then others that live in differing geographical locations. We thought it was important to get representation from all of these different perspectives on this group. So,
You know what I noticed? There wasn't anybody from the two of the departments that have to be here all the time.
well, so here's your picture of the newts. So the clerk and I think you're probably referring to the clerk and recorder and the treasurer. The
Those
two
are really
departments that have to
strange-looking
be.
newts.
So there is the election. Ingrid and I had a good conversation, and she felt that they were unable to have somebody participate at this time, but we have a number of representatives that are very closely tied. And even though Charlie, for instance, works for the SO, he's obviously understands the treasurer's office pretty well. They're also weren't unable to participate because Naju's been out for most of August, and we're kind of jamming. But we kind of reviewed this list with Ingrid and others, and they felt that the representation would be.
Okay. There was nobody from the clerk.
Yeah, everyone had the opportunity to
It's because they're
nominate
too
and
busy
such.
working in the office to.
Yeah.
Well, Patty makes a good point. We have to make sure that we understand the culture of those departments, and that they're not participating in this doesn't disturb me so much, but I just want to make sure they are represented. We get what the
And-
situation is there.
Ingrid's going to have an opportunity to weigh in, because with the leadership team as this comes through, and so her voice should be represented before it comes to y'all for consideration too.
Thank you. There was a cartoon character in Aspen named Sal A. Mander who was a newt back in the day. You can find pictures of him online. Chris Cassette.
I had a newt living in my house for a significant period of time. That's why
Don't say that about, what was his name?
my son Trevor, he's the one who had the newt.
We had a lot that lived in our pond a few years ago, and I have to say they're much cuter in pictures than they are in your hand.
Okay, we better keep moving here. Thank you all for coming. Thanks
you.
for this. I think it's a good idea. It's always good to know where you are and where you're going and what happened.
I'm never going to look at a newt in the same way as I have in the past. A newt. I'll
Okay,
clarify.
we are back to review of future agenda calendars. We're going to try to get this done quickly because we want to have a little bit of time to go resume our executive session.
Okay.
So,
Do you want to get out before traffic?
Probably
late.
too late.
That's about 1:30.
Yeah.
So just real quick,
Thanks for
there
coming.
is a no edit visit on August 16th. I think we had talked about this before. It's being done in partnership with the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition. And so it is at Rocky Mountain Institute, 2 to 5. There's going to be conversations around workforce housing funding opportunities and those sorts of things.
When is it again?
It is the 16th
Friday the 16th.
from 2 to 5 p.m. and it'll be hosted in the Rocky Mountain Institute RMI building. in
That's
Basalt.
after the tour of Phillips with Chapa?
Correct.
Oh, yeah, the roadmap for housing.
Yep.
I will be gone.
Oh, I apologize. That's a roadmap for housing. Yes. Yes.
And it's at, would you tell me again? I don't have that in my little thing.
It's
where
at
it
the
is.
Rocky Mountain Institute
In Basalt, right?
in Basalt.
Yes.
Another one in
2
Tokyo.
to 5. 2 to 5. And I just noted, Ryan and I got square on what we're doing on the 13th,
Thank you.
14th, and 28th.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So who's going on the Phillips tour with Jaffa besides?
I'm not.
I don't have an
On
official
my-
notice of that. I only have my own entry here.
Right.
Is it gonna come up officially from somebody?
Yes, we can get an invite
Do we need
out.
to notice
Steve
it?
and I are gone, Patty's not going, so you won't have a quorum.
I may go, I have to, I'll be remotely attending the CCAT retreat the Thursday and Friday, and I don't know what the agenda is yet. so.
I have a couple agenda items.
Go ahead.
The county picnic is the 20th at the AOC at the airport.
It's the 21st.
Is it
It's
the 21st?
Wednesday at 11:30
Okay,
at the Airport Operations
so
Center.
do we need to notice that, John, or?
It's been
Probably.
our practice too, so we can do that.
Let's make sure, because I don't think it's
Yeah,
noticed
it's
now.
not noticed.
So I have that one, and then, so I thought there were only gonna be 3 of us here on the very critical meeting on the 14th, but I guess Greg and Steve are gonna be zooming in. That's
Yeah, I think we're
critical.
all gonna be there. Just in
That's the
different
plan.
forms.
Yep.
May I suggest that we move the landfill item up to the second reading, so all of the ballot items are all happening in sequence?
I think that's a good idea. It'd be a
John,
lot
did you
easier to
get
keep
that?
track of that. Does that make sense? Does
Okay,
it pos- is
then I
possible?
have questions on the regular meeting on
Rusty remembered that.
the 14th. There is no item number 10, just so you guys know. It goes from item 9 to item 11. There's an item A with a 1 at the top. I'm not quite sure what that means. We're sitting as the Board of Equalization, so you know me, because when Francie passes a motion based on an item number and the item numbers aren't right,
I've only done that one
then we
time.
have to come back and start over again. So
I
let's
only
just
did it one time. I was
let's
trying
just
out John Neely's
clarify that.
approach.
Right.
And then item number 13th on the 14th, item number 13 on the 14th is the Eagle County Housing and Development Authority authorizing assignment of the county's private activity bond allocation. What in the heck is that?
Yeah, so we get an allocation of what's called private activity bonds, which are tax exempt bonds. It allows it to be extended to a private development. And each county gets a certain value allocated every year. We can, kind of like what we do at the airport, you can almost bank them where you can, in this case, we don't have a project requesting the private activity bonds, but Eagle County does have an affordable housing project, a renovation project that they're looking, then we'll be able to capture that allocation again in the
This is the first time
future.
we've done that, though.
It's the first time we've done PABs, but it's not a PAB.
It's
Sorry.
okay, I just have
But
never
it's
heard
not
of
an
it.
unusual
Okay.
request.
Okay, and the petitioned ballot question is not on the 14th. When are we
That's what
setting that? Where's that coming in
That's what I
here?
was talking about.
It should be on the 14th.
It's not.
It's
I
not.
We'll
talked-
get it on there
I
then.
talked
It
to
says
Jeanette
airport
about that.
ballot, Ingrid Gruder.
Yeah, I think Jeanette and I spoke about that. She put that as a placeholder on there. I need to get her a resolution title for that. When the agenda
don't see it.
packet
It was
goes
the-
out
my
to you
computer
all
died,
at the
but it
end
was
of
on
the
the one
week, it'll
online.
be in there.
Yeah, I just see a lot of abatement petition stuff, so let's just clarify that to make sure that's on that day. And
Go ahead.
then I have another one on the 28th. We have 3 short-term rental issues coming before us.
I know that there's one short-term rental application that's coming before you. I don't know if it's on the 28th.
It
or
is
not.
on the 20th, and there's 2 appeals of short-term rental decisions also on the 28th.
Well, that begs the question then if it makes sense at some point to schedule a special meeting for some of the stuff you all have coming up here, I guess.
And do we need an exec session to discuss those short-term rental appeals since we've never seen one? And maybe have that before the 28th?
Can do
Does
that.
that make sense? So we understand what we're doing? And I don't know why we are seeing a short-term rental request. Anyway.
Maybe it was denied and it's an appeal.
one
This
of the
one doesn't say appeal on it.
one of the short-term rental requests. So the short-term rental regulations have a provision that allow a particular short-term rental application to be kicked up to the BoCC at the discretion of the short-term rental administrator.
Okay.
There's a similar provision in the Pickens County Land Use Code, and I don't know exactly why that one is happening like that, but I can find out.
Yeah, I just thought we might want some clarity before it comes before us on that regular meeting on the 28th. Okay, and then I think that's it, because I read them all and highlighted them and circled them and.
I have a quick
you.
question for Roy, just regarding the Ingrid Grutter placeholder for the petition. How is the ballot question title constructed?
We have to do that.
So how is it constructed?
What would be the process? Do we just
I
throw out
will-
ideas for what we want to call it? That sounds like there's something
I will
more
have that
formal than that.
drafted in the resolution for you all to consider.
Okay,
And that will provide some parameters as to what the title is required to contain. My goal would be to have it in a form that you would not need to modify it during the meeting unless you wanted to.
great. Thank you. Okay.
I didn't
so we
see that
know what to
Great.
anticipate.
It's great. We could probably come up with some more things for you to do between
See
now and
that?
then if you
I don't
want.
see that.
I plan on it.
Okay, just as long as it's down here. I don't see that on the future agenda
On
that
the
I have.
14th?
Yeah.
I know, neither of them are on there. It's like,
It was online when
It's
I looked
online.
this
Oh.
morning.
It's online,
It's
yeah.
the
You
last
see,
one between
This is a
first
living
readings
document,
and second
that is
readings.
already 5 minutes
I
ago.
know it, and that's what they give me. They give me
Patty,
the
you are
old
so
mine
stuff.
says
I
five
am
minutes
airport
ago.
ballot
I'm
question.
so 5 minutes old.
Yeah, but it doesn't have ours, which John.
Okay,
explained to me.
so that's it for future agendas? We're good?
I just want to mention one thing while I have you all.
Uh-oh.
I have the exec a week from today is the 13th, and there's availability for the sheriff and a representative from APD to follow up on the conversation you all started with Ingrid about election security on that day.
Right.
So my intent would be to schedule a little bit of time during an exec session for you all to have that discussion. I know that last week there was a internal discussion and meeting with Ingrid and law enforcement personnel, so this would just be a follow-up to that. I
They'll-
wouldn't
they'll
envision
be
it taking
updating
very
us.
long, but
An update from them would be
some of the
great.
specific questions that the board had were related to law enforcement officials, and that would be coming back to you all during that discussion.
Great, thank you. Oh, that's good. Okay, so we're good there. Let's see, now, I think we've got open discussion is finished. We've discussed everything else I see on here. What we would need is a motion to go into exec.
For the
Return
purpose.
to
We need to
exec.
have a motion.
Do we need a motion to return to exec?
Yeah,
or is
so
it
what
still-
we did is we continued the special meeting, but we came out of the executive session. So the special meeting, I would reopen the,
Yeah, go ahead.
reopen the special meeting, and then we'll make a motion to go into executive session, and I'm happy to read the topics that I still have on here. And I've got one additional one, so.
I'll
Okay.
make a motion to reconvene executive session for the purposes of
Employee housing impact fee litigation update, discussion with counsel for the purpose of receiving legal advice pursuant to CRS 246402-4B. Subway lease assignment discussion with counsel for the purpose of receiving legal advice. Discussion with counsel pursuant to CRS 246402-4B. And I'm also gonna suggest we reopen ASC Pitkin County ballot measure procedure and related potential federal aviation administrative regulations, and grant assurance enforcement discussion with counsel for the purpose of receiving legal advice pursuant to CRS 246402-4B.
Okay, so that's what was
Right.
moved and seconded.
And you've been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Great, thank you.
I'll have
Okay.
to reopen
Kelly
the-
was out of the room, so.